welcome everyone. We're back talking about our Power Baseball League. So yesterday we talked a lot about all the requirements and kind of thinking about everything that this project could entail and working to figure out how we can use it to help Malcolm and I learn more about all these new tools that are part of the Power Platform. And then today we're going to kind of dig into those requirements and start breaking it down to say, where do we actually want to begin? How does this fit into a logical project for us to work on together? So Malcolm, I'm going to pull our notes back up, and then why don't you start talking about what you kind of picked out as the key themes that we talked about yesterday?
Yeah, yesterday that was so fun and great, but also almost overwhelming, right? To go through this huge list. And by the time we were done, I think we probably talked through it maybe 15, 20 minutes. And we had this huge list of all this stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, we've kind of bitten off a lot in doing this. So after we did it, I was reviewing the notes and thinking about it and reflecting on it and thought, one of your initial questions were like, what are the challenges or what are the key business challenges, which is a great place to start any project, right? Because that's ultimately what we're trying to do, is solve some business challenges. And I think three things floated to the top of the list for me as I was reading and thinking through all this. Number one, in our fictitious little example here, we have an organization where we've got a lot of data from previous years that's sitting in like spreadsheets that, the league doesn't have a real systematic approach. They've just every year they get all the registrations, they put them into a spreadsheet, and then they create tabs and divide them into teams, and that's how they manage all that data. And so we want to consolidate that so that we have a holistic view of what's happened in the past. Because, and again, in speaking, it's a fake example, but it's also rooted in kind of real experience, because I know I've seen leagues that I've worked with before that do face that exact challenge, where they're like, well, let's look back at the demographic of kids each year, and they are pulling the data in 7 or 8 different spreadsheets as they look back over the years instead of one holistic system. So and I think that's
not just sports teams and kids things and volunteers. That's businesses. That's how everybody's working. But
that's right.
Yeah. So that's a great goal, I think.
Yeah. So if we can reduce, I think we talked yesterday about like day one, we were kind of using as our approach, like first iteration, first phase, we really need to focus on, let's get a platform in place to capture that data and bring in some of the historical data that exists so that we have some insight into what our leagues look like over the years. The other thing that floated to the top was that it's a very manual process. And so we've got manual applications, parents are filling them in, mailing them back or dropping them off. And then our association staff are taking that data and dropping it into spreadsheets. And, there's obviously a risk of user error there. There's definitely some possibility to expand to like an electronic form of some sort. But I think just for starters, if we could even just get a really slick, like simple to use form that our own internal staff could take the application that's being submitted and just read through that and input the data really quickly, that would probably bring some efficiency to the process and eliminate some of the manual process. I think, again, end goal is probably let's not have our own staff do it. Let's let people input that data. But from a starting point and not trying to bite off more than we can chew, let's just make it easier for our own staff right now.
That's fair. Well, and if we have a form the staff are using, they can almost be like a beta test group. So they could be testing it and making sure the process works and the data goes where it's supposed to. And then that could be the jumping board for getting it out to other people and helping them and kind of making it a full electronic process.
Yeah, 100% agree. And so then with that data, the other issue that we talked about yesterday that kind of had a thread through a few different things that were coming up was that that communication piece that we didn't, as an association, we don't have great mechanism for communication with our constituents, if you will. So we've got not just families, but also coaches and all our volunteers. And we're fragmented in our approach to the communication. We have different lists in different places and different spreadsheets. And every time we need to send anything out, it's a headache. And so can we somehow consolidate? And I think that springboards off of the other two. If we can put all the data in one place, have access to historical data, I'm thinking about, wow, we need more coaches. Let's go back 3 years and ping all of those. Let's email all the coaches that have been around for those years and say, hey, we are in need. And sometimes volunteers are just waiting to be asked. So maybe we'll secure some more volunteers if we just make the ask. So helping improve our communications would be a big piece.
So do you think our goal for day one should be doing those communications, or should it be like setting a foundation, or maybe should we pick a certain scenario in there that we want to accomplish for day one, or what do you think?
That's a good question. I think we should position ourselves to be able to send that first communication to families and that first communication to coaches about the upcoming season. I think that makes sense. And we're routing that through this new platform.
Yeah, so that means historic data we want, but we don't necessarily need it to accomplish this goal. So that I think that's good.
We'd need our registrations for this year, so to speak. Yeah.
Right.
Cool. So I wonder if we maybe need to look back at what we did yesterday.
Sure.
And start kind of try and segment what of those fit into these 3 key business challenges and focuses because I think if we can do that today, and then maybe in our next meeting we can start to drill into the specifics, like what fields do we need.
Exactly.
And even, I think the other thing we really need to talk about is, what system are we even talking about? Like, when we talk about a system, we kind of have to pick a data structure.
Well, and we have to name it something, and it has to be something baseball themed and cute. So that's important. We should have a whole session on brainstorming a name for said system that you're selling to all of North America.
It could get contentious.
Yeah.
Selling to North America. Yeah, it is an ultimate goal, but that's like long time. We got to test it. We got to make sure it works first. And then we'll make our millions.
It's coming. I made phase 1 blue, aqua.
Okay.
So let's talk about our goals. So running the baseball league, I would say, yes, we can count this, although probably not the whole league, right?
Yep.
So we're not going to highlight our collection of everything.
Correct. I agree.
I don't think we need to care about administration right now because this is phase 1. I think we can get to that later.
Right.
Because I think something that we'll have to think about is, like, for phase 1, an administrator such as us could be the one creating the coaches and things like that. So we might not need security around that data yet, but that's
not initially. Yeah.
Okay. We do want to drive some communications efficiency, right? So we can highlight that guy.
I think the other 2 stay unhighlighted, though.
Unhighlighted. Okay.
Production and paper is a big one. That's really what we're trying to do. Well, I guess we're not really. Yeah, eventually. Yeah, maybe not in phase 1. We're still, the paper's still there. It's just how we're managing that.
The processing is changing, which might mean we might want to add another goal here just for streamlining the registration process, right?
Yep.
But there's always one. Missed a couple. Oh, that's so wrong. There's always one lining. There's always one Ethel in all of these organizations that's printing out their whole spreadsheet. So
no
you
offense.
never know. No offense to any Ethels. I once knew this lady. She worked on our CRM system, and she was like 86 years old. And every day when I'd walk by her desk and she's using like her screen reader because she's 86 years old, she just made me so happy.
That's awesome.
I just smiled every time I walked by her desk. She never knew who I was. Anyways. All right, so here's what we had determined was success yesterday. Data, a little bit of reporting and streamlined communication. I think that still lines up with our goals that we set out today.
Yep, I agree.
Highlight all of that. And is there anything from our someday goals that are moving up? I don't think so.
No. Well, maybe communication improvement for everyone though. So
yeah.
It's in part, but we're really just focused on our initial
right.
Families, coaches.
Right, for sure. Regular, I think here when we're talking about for day one, I'm thinking only our association is still going to have access, right?
Yep.
Because
I would agree.
Yeah. Coaches, we'll figure that out later. But in terms of data, I think, well, I was going to say everything, but I might change my mind on that because I think these equipment and scheduling and fundraising we don't need to worry about. But all the player, player and team data, we care about all of that. And I think the one note for those listening at home is that all this data we might not care about capturing it now, but I think it's going to be important for us to think about it as we're building out our data map, right, and figuring out how things go together, so that we're prepared for that growth, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Do you think that we'll need the awards day one? I know.
Coaches stuff. I don't think awards. I think, going back to that goal of let's just try to consolidate and clean up our data and our historical data, give us a foundation for those communications and remove some of the, or enhance the manual process, I guess is how we could say it. I think that all of that is future phase stuff.
Right.
All of what you see here. Sorry.
An assumption we're making is that one, all of this data does exist somewhere. Right. And then I think two, that most of it exists in separate spreadsheets. Because I think if we got the data and it had all the players with all their awards and columns, then it might change what we do here from day one, right? Because then we might not want to break everything out. Okay. Cool. And drafts and fundraising, that doesn't have to happen. Okay. So this has got us to a much more manageable list in terms of data. So for our next session, if we're just actually going to break down coaches, players, and teams and what this data looks like and how it's connected, I think that's much more manageable. Yeah. Is there any other data that's going to be needed for kind of these key goals that we called out that we need to add to this list?
We obviously will have to dig into like what information is captured, like what does that application form include and what data are you got to help us frame that out. But I don't think that there's anything else that we would necessarily need. So my brain's going to like improving the manual process. So we're gonna wanna have timestamp on stuff so that when people are entering things, it's stamping when it was entered and when we receive the application, that kind of stuff. But these are all, I think these are things we probably talk about in our next call where we really start to get granular about. Okay, we need we decide on whatever the system is. As a former or still CRM guy, my brain immediately goes to like, okay, well, we need an entity to manage some of this information. We maybe need a related entity, but I don't even know that we're there yet. I think I may be jumping the gun a little bit because we need to decide where we want to put this and how we want to capture this.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's where I was kind of struggling while we were prepping for this call, because how I would like to do it is say, okay, we have the player entity. What are the fields associated with it? And are those fields text fields? Are they this? Are they that? But I'm trying to get away from that because we need to break up. Let's not talk in terms of CRM, but we're talking in terms of the solution, so that then when we take off our requirements hats and put on our designer hats, then we can be looking at it kind of holistically, like we said.
Yeah, and cool. I wonder if there's value. Maybe next time, if we start to think about, maybe we look at what all exists in the Microsoft Business Application Suite. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there. Maybe lists is the right way to go, or maybe there's a function of to do that we should be using, or like who knows, right? So I don't think those are the right answers, but maybe they are. Maybe we need to kind of dive into that. And
Right.
I think coming up with a framework for just making that decision might be a good place to start.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Well, I think this was a good place to get to today, right? I think we decided our goal of where we wanted to begin and what we want to do for day one, and we have a plan for our next discovery session. Anything else to add to sign us out?
No, I think that's a good. Again, we're doing this on the on the side, right, amidst life. So I think we'll work in small chunks, and that was a great way to take that overwhelming list and just kind of get real granular and focused and hone in on the real important business challenges. So I think we're in good shape to move forward.
Sounds great. See you guys next time.
Bye.